Welcome back to Active Ingredients, the life science leadership podcast with me, Tom Dove, founder and CEO of Fraser Dove International. So today I'm joined by one of the most inspiring commercial leaders that I've met, Laurent Abuaf. His career spans industries, continents and leadership levels, and he's got a really interesting journey from automotive and consulting at BCG, then into really senior roles at AstraZeneca, before moving into that emerging biotech world. So we talk about leadership, career transitions, and the ingredients of success. If you're navigating your own leadership journey, this is one you won't want to miss. I hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome back to Active Ingredients, the life science leadership podcast with me, Tom Dove, founder and CEO of Fraser Dove International. I'm very excited for today's episode. Get ready to listen and learn from one of the most inspiring commercial leaders I've spoken to in years. I'm joined by none other than Laurent Abuaf. Okay. Was that right? Pronunciation?
Yeah, that's perfect.
How are you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you very much, Thomas. And thank you for the introduction. I don't think it's right at all, but it's very flattering.
Oh, well, get ready for this, because I'm going to say that you're joining us from Switzerland, where you've been settling down roots after a wonderfully varied global career, including over 15 years as an expat. Laurent's career didn't actually start in life sciences. His first leadership roles were actually in automotive and consulting at BCG before embarking on an outstanding career at AstraZeneca. During this time, Laurent worked and lived in a multitude of differing cultures, countries and continents. And then after leaving AstraZeneca and the complex global leadership of large pharma, he's been able to make the transition into the SME world, where he's held president, non-exec director and board roles. So, Laurent, welcome.
Thank you very much, Thomas. And I don't think I have very much to add to your description. I don't see myself as nicely as you see it. I see more like this is where progressively my career has taken me through. Lots of opportunities and challenges that I'm both very thankful for, to be truthful. And where I am today is the sum of all these parts. And it feels good, but it feels unfinished as well. So there is still so much more to learn and to do afterwards. But definitely pharma is now my core. It's in my heart, it's tattooed all over my body. And that's where I want to actually continue to act and to be present.
Yeah, and I can't wait to dig into your story because, as you said, you're definitely in a really good part of your career now. You've got lots of good learnings, from other kinds of leadership as well, from different countries, different continents, different cultures. So I'm really excited to get into the detail. But I always like to kick off the Active Ingredients podcast with the question, what do you think are the three key ingredients of a successful leader and why?
Yeah. And it's a very good question. And I think it's a very difficult one because the first question I have back to you is, what is successful? You see, if you mean that successful is someone with great career, made loads of money, it's probably slightly different active ingredients if you just aim at being happy and have a balanced life to a certain extent, which is a little bit more where I want to go today. I think still there are some common parts over there, which is really making sure that you're true to yourself, whoever yourself is, by the way. You can be a relentless, ambitious, semi-psychopathic, a successful leader who's really driven by power, impact, money, and if that is what is making you happy, this is what you should be doing. But for me, it's more about people making an impact. I'm quite competitive, so being successful in a competitive environment, launching products, this kind of thing, that I think is something that makes me happy as well. But the other part is also being true to yourself in terms of who you really are, what is your value system.
Yep.
I have a sort of philosophy that I discovered a bit late in my career, which is the no regret philosophy. And that's true for professional life, but that's also true in personal life. making sure that whatever you do, whatever you decide in each of these critical points in your career, ask yourself the question is, am I okay with this? Did I do everything in my power to be confident that this is the right decision? You see? And that has served me quite well over the past, I would say, probably 10 years. So yeah, I think that's a very, very key active ingredient in my definition of success, I would say.
Yeah, great. And I like the way that you threw the question back there. You know, it is difficult to answer. I think some people have a different viewpoint on what is successful leadership. From some of the executives that I've spoken to, it's that kind of, you know, leaving a legacy or being remembered, you know, having that kind of mentor vibe to their leadership. For others, it is ambition. It's, you know, the amount of revenue that they've brought a business or the amount of, you know, people that they've led in an organization. So I like to ask it to try and see philosophically where the conversation's going to go today, but you're really clear with your kind of no regret, and I'm really interested to dig into more about your kind of personal life and how that has positively affected your professional life and your career development. So we'll get into those in a little bit, but let's start with you know, when you were younger. Let's go back to kind of the school, university days and getting to know whether a career in life sciences was always destined. Can you give me a bit of insight into that?
Yeah, so it was definitely not. I think when I was younger, going through my studies, I had no clue what I wanted to do. So most of my choices have been taken to keep as many open doors as possible. So my parents were coming from the scientific side, but more university in France. So researchers, but also there were professors, one in chemistry, the other one in physics, in French universities. So nobody had any clue about business or economics. But for me, it was the way that was keeping the most doors open. So I was not excellent in math. I was not super bright in everything and all this, but I was quite a good generalist. Back in the history of France, there was a period of time which people who knew a bit about everything, they were called humanists. And I think my profile was more of a generalist. So I went into business studies. I did HEC Paris. I was lucky enough to be able to get into that school. And that was amazing. But even through the school and the economic studies and the management, marketing, strategy, accounting, all these topics, honestly, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So it was about keeping the opportunities open. I started my career in automotive industry, in the commercial part, in the sales part. And that actually opened my eyes a lot into the management piece, the people piece. I've always loved technology. I've always loved science. And so that's also some of the stuff that has been developed progressively. But you would have met me before I went into HEC, my first jobs and all this. I was looking a little bit like a nerd. I was more of a dreamer. I had my glasses because I became myopic quite early on, but I got my eyes operated when I was 40 years old. So I waited a lot because I was so scared. And yeah, it was, I really didn't have a pure vocation. This is what I want to do later on. But yeah, I think progressively my life reconnected to reality, and I found my way, I would say, during the studies and after that, over the different moments of my career.
Yeah, I was a dreamer. I like that. But do you think that there were maybe too many dreams or too many options as a kind of, as you said, you were a bit of a generalist? Were you able to not really choose your career path at that point because there were just too many options and too much choice?
Yeah, but there was also negative options, meaning I didn't want to be an engineer and do only math. I didn't want to go into um, studies where I wasn't too sure about what was coming after. I come from a quite modest environment, so making sure that the economics were working after I did my studies was also quite important for me. So these are the elements that guided me, plus what I liked. So I liked the science, I liked the numbers, I liked the creativity kind of stuff. So the marketing was also attracting to me at one stage. And to be fair, I think you don't really realize what it means to work when you're doing your studies. It came very late for me because in the French system, it's very academic for very long before you actually get into a job. And so when I entered HEC, and it was 89, believe it or not. Oh my God, I'm so young. The first thing I did after the first year of study is actually take the opportunity to take a break and go work for 1 year in a company. So they just created that program for the first time. And after the first year, it was still very academic. I had no clues of whatever I wanted to do. So that's why I went to work, got out of the campus, took an apartment with a friend of mine. He worked for Air France and I worked for Renault for 1 year. And that was probably one of the best choices I made during my studies, because it all became more real, what it means to work. So yeah, that's how progressively the choices were made. But that 1 year working and interrupting the study, even though it delayed my diploma by 1 year, that's probably one of the greatest choices I made without knowing it.
Yeah, great. And I think that that's the really interesting thing about your story is there's a lot of opportunities that kind of were created, and you seem to be someone that takes opportunity as it pops up or creates it yourself. So we'll dig into that in a little bit
Yeah.
more detail. But for those that don't know, you then went from studies to Renault.
Yeah.
You then worked in a mixture of sales and HR type positions, and then also moved into consulting at BCG. You know, my thought process on all of those roles is that there's definitely a human element, so that humanist thing that you spoke about is definitely true, but also there must be underlying ambition, drive, communication skills that are within you for you to take on those three challenges, those three roles within the first part of your career. Can you explain a little bit more about your thoughts on
Yeah.
that being embedded in you?
Yeah. The when I joined Renault, I joined them because not because that was my passion. I really liked the company. I did work 1 year with them, so I knew the good, but also the bad and the ugly, to a certain extent, of course. But when I finished HEC, they really came and they wanted me to come in. So they made a good offer, and then I started, and I really started in the commercial function, which is still something of a red thread. I like the commercial side. I like the competitiveness of it. I like the winning, I would say, of the commercial part. So that was the red thread of my career in Renault. Started hands dirty in the dealership, selling
Yep.
cars, repairing cars, and this kind of thing. Then moved into managing the commercial incentive of the whole dealership network in France. And then after that, I had the opportunity to take my first management role. First time, and I was quite young, I was less than 30, and I was responsible for a team of salesmen who were all older and more experienced than me. Yeah, that was an amazing experience, because coming in, being the youngest, a bit helped by the military system, semi-military system of the dealership organization, but yeah, that was full of learnings from a people perspective, full of learning from building respect and trust, between very different types of profiles. I had also some experience with an old-fashioned dealer director and a new generation dealership director. And curiously enough, I went along super well with the old-fashioned, but we were fighting quite a lot with the new modern one. And the simple reason, and that's why you start doing a little bit of introspection, the simple reason is I had human beings very high on my agenda. He had humans being very low on his agenda. And we were fighting like crazy. But you see the sales and you see the people part coming a little bit there. And then the lady who was the HR director for commercial at the time, she came and picked me when I was in that dealership, and she said, we are reorganizing completely the human resources part of Renault, which was more people admin rather than human resources. And we need people who knows the business so that we can start planning, but with some business knowledge, not independently, not only functional. And that's when I joined HR over there. And the kind of view you get when you are in a functional position across a full division of a company, you start to understand how people matter, how capabilities matter, how internal mobility matter. These were completely eye-opening topics for me compared with what I was doing in the commercial. But one thing was sure is Renault was still managed half like a French administration.
Okay.
And it was slow, it was heavy, middle management layer was completely clogged. And I was seeing myself, I knew where I would be in 10 years in the Renault system. And I was not happy with that. I had my friends from HEC driving very good careers everywhere and all this, and I was feeling a little bit left behind. So I started to look around, but also to push internally in Renault. But I was in HR. I had unique insight in how things were working, so I knew it probably could not work. And then you always need a bit of luck. It was the moment where big management consulting firms were looking for people able to connect dream and reality. Yep. And with industry experience, really, so that it's not concept. I met with McKinsey and BCG, went through both processes for recruiting, got an offer from both of them, ultimately chose BCG for small reasons. They're both very, very good and very interesting companies. I just felt that BCG guys were a bit prouder of their work for the clients and not so much about their etiquette. But I've worked so much with McKinsey later on in my career. I know that this was just an impression at the time, but that's how I joined BCG. I thought honestly I would never make it, that I was not smart enough. And they have very structured interviews, cases, and this kind of thing when they watch your way of thinking unfold. And I really thought I was lost for this kind of opportunity, and I was quite pleasantly surprised to be finally hired and did almost 5 years in BCG, and that was amazing.
Yeah, and a dreamer taking the dream to reality, as you just quite nicely said. You should have maybe raised that in your interview with them. Might have made it a bit easier.
But I could not realize that yet. That's the kind of thing you do, but you're not even aware you're doing that. So it's progressively, when you take a step back, you try to learn from what you've done and all this. That's where you're able to understand a little bit better what has happened, basically.
And to give our listeners a little bit more of an idea of how you progressed through those 5 years at BCG, can you let us know what you were doing at the end? So what your kind of last role was as part of the BCG group? Yeah.
So in BCG, curiously enough, I did not do one case in pharma. I did cases in post-merger integration, in banking, in building materials, and I was in charge usually of the HR part of it. So that was the connection with my last position in Renault, working in HR, taking care of the HR topic in a PMI. I worked in new technologies. I worked in equipment for automotive industry as well. Pet food, so fast-moving consumer goods. That my last case was actually with automotive equipment with Valeo. It was a tough one because it was how to design the growth strategy for the original equipment manufacturing part, knowing that technology was evolving. It's a business with super thin margins. In pharma, we don't know what thin margin means. So that was really interesting. But the thing is, after 4 or 5 years in BCG, you need to ask yourself your question: do you want to be a partner there? And are they going to let you be a partner there? And I was missing the industry life. I was missing building on your impact on the longer lasting term, both building on your failure and successes. And I wanted to go back to industry. So I opened that, and it was not sure that BCG would ever let me be a partner, by the way. But my own taste was more going back to industry. So BCG at the time, they had this motto, which was very interesting: up in or up out. And just by tweaking the up or out, by up in or up out thing, it was really meaningful for them, because they would help their alumni get into important roles, because they know that this is building a longer lasting network. And that's how they helped me meet people in fast moving consumer goods, in building industry, but also in pharma. And this is where I really made an encounter with this HR director of AstraZeneca France at the time. And yeah, that was an amazing opportunity, because it ticked all the boxes. Pharma was a sector in fast concentration, so a lot of post-merger or project management. They were having some optimization, because the golden days of pharma, where pharma was doing crazy stuff, were going out progressively. So they needed people with optimization skills. And I got this amazing opportunity to go and create the Salesforce Effectiveness Department in AstraZeneca France. And that was the beginning of my career. But I had some doubts going into pharma. Ethical aspects, am I joining the dark side of the force and stuff like that? But I was reassured with the HR, with my own research as well, that this was really going into the right direction, that the ethical aspect was going right. I loved the science part, the evidence-based part. And at the time, I didn't even scratch the surface of what it was. But making the difference for the patient, thanks to a good understanding of biology, of science, and bringing evidence, that sounded very attractive for me.
Yeah, and you were then able to, what you were missing at BCG was that impact longer term.
Right.
You then take on your next challenge, and lo and behold, you're at that business for over 15 years.
Yeah, absolutely. It was this is a sign that it was probably the right move for me, because the first job I did in AstraZeneca France, building the Salesforce Effectiveness Department, SFE, and that was not standing for Statistics for England, which was very often the trouble of Salesforce Effectiveness. But bringing someone like me, who knew very little, if anything, about the industry, inside the commercial teams, and the commercial teams in AstraZeneca France at the time, it was more than 1,300 med reps, huge teams launching in respiratory, in cardiovascular. So it was an amazing experience, and trying to bring structure into the way you measure the investment and the resource allocation in the sales forces, that was not an easy challenge. In addition, it was part of a huge project in AstraZeneca International, and France was one of the major pilot markets at the time. So that's also the reason why they hired someone like me, because I was able to both represent France in the big project management, internationally speaking, but at the same time, I was able to connect and be fully integrated into the French teams. And my approach to Salesforce effectiveness was, this is a management tool first. It's not about system. Of course, it is about systems in the background, but it's really about what do you measure, how is it going to improve impact, resource allocation, ultimately profitability of the company as well. And all this very focused on people, because you're talking to people in the field that are talking to people in the doctor's office, in the practices and all this. So it's a very interesting, it's like trying to find that plug that is connecting systems and people, so that you're not speaking system because system is not speaking people, but trying to find that intermediate connection. And honestly, I think with the team, we did a good job over there. I opened a generation of follow-up of BCG hires in that position in AstraZeneca France. And I think, all of us have been quite successful in the different next steps that people have taken. But I opened a source for BCG candidate into that affiliate with the SFE position.
You were the pathfinder. Yeah, because I find
Yeah.
it fascinating. Having worked in headhunting myself for 20 years, you look at the migration of people from management consultancy firms into industry, and sometimes there's a real desire to have it. And then there was a time in, I don't know, the late 2000s, 2008, 9, 10, that kind of time, where it wasn't as fashionable, because there was a bit of a time when they were like, look, we're not seeing the impact from our hires that are coming from the consultancy field. They're coming up and they're doing some lovely presentations, but are they those that can really impact or influence the business longer term? But it seems like you've done that and then continue to be able to bring in other talent that could do the same.
I think I was lucky enough to have industry past experience. So I was not a purebred theoretical consultant. When I moved out of BCG, I already had this rooting into what it means to work in industry. And it's not about concept. It's about organization, it's about people. And the moment you understand that, that's where you generate the impact. But if you keep working conceptually, then it never turns into any kind of real change. And you're just an internal consultant, but you're still a consultant. So you have to really change your mindset from I'm giving advice to I am actually driving impact and helping people to drive impact over there. And I think that's why it did work out for me and for some of the generation. But you're right, you're completely right. After the fourth generation, they stopped. And also the function of Salesforce effectiveness, commercial excellence, had built capabilities on the market enough so that you don't need the consultant to be the pathfinders. You can actually take some capabilities and start building on that. So you're absolutely right. But I think for me, the consulting experience as a dreamer has allowed me really to connect that dream, because you should not be scared of dreaming ever, whatever situation you're in, because with the right effort, the right steps, and the right timing, basically you can achieve almost anything. And BCG gave me that sort of naive confidence that everything is possible as long as you put the right steps, resources, and time, and then you go towards that dream. Maybe you're not getting it completely, and along the way you divert to something which is maybe more realistic, or good enough to a certain extent. But still, I'm thankful forever for the BCG impact in allowing people to dream and actually to start getting towards that direction.
And then we look at your conversation with the HR director in France. What happened there? How did you go from BCG, chatting to other companies, and then choosing life sciences and AstraZeneca?
Yeah. Sometimes life is like that. You make an encounter. And that was the case with that lady from HR in AstraZeneca France, what was supposed to be a slightly artificial setup where I was trying to say, okay, what for profiles like mine, what is your kind of industry offering? Are they any space and all this? So that was, semi-awkward conversation. Finally, it was a conversation that lasted almost 2 hours. And at the end, we were really exchanging and discussing on everything. She was sharing with me that she had really hard times understanding what the new generation wanted. And she could not really connect with them. And I was sharing with her that actually salsa had changed my life. Salsa dancing had changed my life. So there was this kind of connection. And they had no position at the time, but she said, okay, let me talk to my sales director and come back to you. And then she talked to the sales director. I met with the sales director. And there was not the same click, but we had an amazing understanding. And she was in charge of the 1,500 people, including management of the sales force. Very strong, very strong-willed woman as well, very driven, extremely bright from a commercial perspective. And then she said, okay, I have nothing, but let me come back to you. And then 3-4 weeks, 1 month later, she comes back and she said, okay, we would want to create a new function. You can take bits and pieces here and you can create the rest. It's part of this big international project. What do you think? I ask a few questions. I say, yeah, I'm really interested. And then before I know it, 1 month later, I meet with the president of AstraZeneca France, and we have a bit of chit chat. And finally, the only true meaningful question he asked me at the time was, do you think you can work with this lady? The commercial director. And then it raised a little bit of a flag, and I thought, and I said, yeah, I think I can. And before I knew, I was hired in AstraZeneca France to create the SFE department. So it's these accumulation of connections and fit. Finally, it could have not worked, but it did work out, and it was the start of a really interesting path, I would say.
Love it. Lovely. Thank you for sharing. And can we quickly go back to salsa dancing changed your life? Can you just elaborate on that a little?
Yeah, so as a dreamer and as someone a little bit, loving science and this kind of thing, I think there was a long period of my time where my mind and my body was not completely connected. So I think that was it. And why do any boy ever go into salsa dancing? It's because of girls, of course. So I was no exception. So I started to learn salsa because of a girl, which I was madly in love with, and started to take the courses. And then we went in Cuba. We took courses all over Paris. And what I found amazing is actually, I think salsa connected my mind and my body. They say the dance is in the feet, and that's true, is in the feet and how you listen. And that the feeling of being whole with your mind and body, plus, of course, the sensuality, which is related to Cuban salsa dancing, that opened a completely new field for me. Where that's probably where I emerged from a post-nerd phase into something where I was a little bit more whole to a certain extent. But yeah, it's an endless pit of stories, which I won't get into today.
But yeah, thank you. We will definitely over a glass of wine. But yeah, I think it's interesting that you said one of the key active ingredients is being true to yourself. It seems as though that's the moment that you actually really got to know yourself.
Exactly, because sometimes you know only half of yourself, and you're true to that half, but not the other half. So I think you're right.
Yeah, then they say the best leaders are the best listeners. It's just you were listening to salsa music.
Yeah.
Maybe not your team at the time. Okay, so I mean, thank you very much for sharing that. You then embarked on a really interesting career at AZ, Can you just share how many continents, countries, cities you lived in during that kind of 15-year period?
Yeah. So I started in Rueil-Malmaison, so close to Paris. Then I had the opportunity to take a senior management team position in a small affiliate in Belgium. So moved to Brussels, where I was the commercial excellence director. I did that for 3 years in a period of time which, from a business perspective, was really tough. Loss of patent, restructuring, a lot of cost cutting, but from a management perspective, that was an amazing experience. From a personal perspective, this is also where I met my wife. So I have special ties, I would say, to Belgium and AstraZeneca Belgium as well. So I'm part of this, huge number of people who met their partner in the job. And then a completely left field opportunity came to be the general manager for Vietnam. And my next step, so at the time, you really look at your career into, I do this 2-3 years, then I move to the next level and this kind of thing. So that was what was driving me. But my next steps, because I speak Spanish, was more taking a BU director role in Latin America or somewhere like that to get out of function and truly into the business. But then came that opportunity in a country which was full of opportunities, but it's always a matter of how you see it. You remember that tale of the guys who are making shoes. They go to Africa, and 2 of them are going to Africa. One comes back and says, listen, there's no market. They're all walking naked feet, so there's no market there. And the other one comes back and says, there's a huge opportunity. They're all walking with naked feet. So Vietnam was like that, but it was starting quite well. Rep office, very entrepreneurial, pioneering, very, very high growth at the time. But of course, a complete different cultural environment, business environment. And with my wife, we were, she was just pregnant. So we really discussed, okay, how are we going to do that? We both wanted to have international experience. We went into visiting, kind of look and see trip, really worked out how we want to do that, how we can do that with her pregnancy and the cultural shock of this kind of thing. And after discussion and all this, we said, okay, let's give it a shot. So I took over a general manager role in Vietnam, sometimes wondering what the hell I was doing, 12,000 kilometers from my wife, my pregnant wife, not understanding a word of what everybody was saying. But then I silenced these noises and just go for it, work with the people, amazing people, the Vietnamese, very, very high, how you say that, very active, buzzing, wanting to succeed by all means and almost at all cost, which can be dangerous at time. So yeah, basically very successful both business-wise as well as growth-wise for the company. We started with 120 people, and when I left, we were 300. Started with less than 25 million and almost 50 when I left. So doubling in a trajectory to reach $100 million business. We had an amazing life, expat life over there. It was still the good years where there were true support from the company. My wife found a job as a business development director there with a very small pharma company. And so, 3 years in Ho Chi Minh City with 4 power outages per week. Sometimes what you think is a critical good for yourself, they're out of stock for 3 months. But apart from that, it was an amazing life, to be fair. It's, the weather, the people, the experience. Even with one kid very young, and our second one was actually born in Vietnam. So that means we trusted the country as well a little bit. So Belgium, Vietnam, then Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. I was responsible business-wise for Malaysia and Singapore. We did a bit more than 2 years and a half over there, completely different from a business perspective. but Malaysia, an amazing mix of quite developed modern market, but also the vibe of the emerging market, where the messy stuff and everything can happen. Still a land of opportunities, but less structured than Singapore, but really interesting. And then we were called back into London, where I worked for the European organization as the VP for Sales and Marketing, then global in AstraZeneca in Cambridge, but we did not move. We were still around London, and then as the company president for the UK, we stayed a good 7-8 years in the UK, and now we've moved to Zurich, or next to Zurich. It's the suburbs of Zurich. So yeah, that's a couple of countries. So Belgium, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, London, and now Zurich plus France, 6 countries in total. That's an interesting move.
It seems like you've got 2 very important catalysts, I would say. One professional and one personal that came from taking that opportunity in Belgium and then Vietnam. So would you say that the Vietnam leadership role then created the next wave or few roles that you were then able to embark on?
Yeah, definitely. And I think at one stage in your career, you need to be aware of the necessity, to a certain extent, of taking a bit of risk. That move was risky, but it was risky with upside, not only risky with downsides. And the successful business development in Vietnam, in my role, the first general manager role, the role that I played later on, still in the same region, the leading Malaysia and Singapore, which was much more sizable in terms of business in total. This has generated the accelerator for me in my career. With the question mark, how do you ever go back? You see, so these are things you need to be aware, and you need to be prepared, even when you're very well taken care of, successful in your expat life and all this. You need to think, how is it possible for you at one stage to go back if you want to go back? But these 2 roles have really been the catalyst for my next moves into AstraZeneca, because I was well known. I had driven quite impressive results both in Vietnam and Malaysia, Singapore, in different types of businesses. And yeah, this has driven that. So from a professional perspective, that was it. But the other catalyst you were talking about, the personal one, is the fact that, yeah, my wife, she agreed to put her career slightly on pause and to go a bit sideways when we were in Asia. And so it was also that enablement that allowed us together to actually pursue these opportunities and then come back into the UK, where this time her career started to take off again. We had our 3rd child in Malaysia, by the way. That these 2 elements, they have allowed, I would say, us as a family to really evolve in the different places that we've been living in.
Yeah, I love that. I think, you and I have spoken about this at length in the past, but building the strongest possible team at home has then given you the opportunity to, fast track your career. So managing that work-life togetherness balance hasn't been easy, because you were also having children at the same time. Is there any further advice that you could give any listeners, I suppose, on your thoughts on the importance of making sure that you have that strong bond at home to kickstart, an executive career?
Yeah, I think for us, it was really finding the balance. And it can never be only one leading, because that creates unbalance at one stage. And of course, we had very different roles and even from a salary perspective, very different aspects. But that's not only what matters. What matters is both spouses realizing their own potential in their career, and not one tampering with the other one, or overwhelming the other one. For us, that has been the secret, to really discuss this, put it on the table. After I left AstraZeneca, I was there to support the family and to support it so that the career of my wife can really accelerate. So that was the opportunity behind the threat of not having a job for some time. Similarly, right now I am in transition between two jobs. So much for how you define successful, by the way. but still, I'm confident about the different next steps that could be happening. But that part is allowing also me to be here so that she can continue to really progress in her career. So that balance, with no ego, with only the discussion, finding your own comfort, and not fearing to having the discussion, because whatever happens, the discussion will have to happen. It's you cannot keep it under the carpet because it will explode. And that's what we saw with some of our friends, where at one stage the untold has accumulated so much, it explodes, and it's not good. So far, we've managed, fingers crossed, legs crossed, arm crossed, everything crossed. We've managed to really keep this very well balanced. And progressively. So we've managed 2 careers so far over the past 15 years. And we've managed that without one or the other being frustrated in any kind of way.
Yeah, and must be, super inspiring as well for your kids to see you've taken risks, taken opportunities, lived in different countries. That's also something, as a father of 3 myself, it's you're setting a legacy or showing your kids the way, that professional life can work in harmony.
Yeah, and it's very important that they have both strong role models, and it's interchangeable. I'm doing laundry, for God's sake.
Yeah.
So you see that, and I don't like that. To be honest, that's the part I don't like. All the rest is okay, but sometimes laundry, it's just bothering me too much. But they see both. You see, that's the complementarity, and I think that kind of a value system in the heads of our kids, it's very important, because that's the best way to avoid bias. We're always talking how to avoid bias and all this. It comes with education. It starts with the education, and hopefully our kids will have a bit of that view that it exists. There's not only one size fits all, or one side winning and the other side not winning, and this kind of thing. No, it can work. It takes effort, takes resources as well. So you need to plan for that, but yeah, it can work.
Yeah, I myself and my wife at home, we both love football. Our family, all of our kids play football. I coach my children's teams, but my wife still plays.
Yeah.
Right. So my kids now look at me and they're like, "Why don't you play football like mummy anymore?" And I'm like, "Oh, I think it's because I'm too old. I don't know." So yeah, it's those inspiring role models that they're seeing every day. It's really, really interesting dynamic. So, what we're going to do is obviously we've spoken here about biggest career moves and things like that. It's quite clear that AstraZeneca and you at that time created and took opportunities. So they helped you have a fulfilling career, and obviously you did a great job within that organization. Now, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you found from a leadership standpoint throughout your career, because it's not easy staying in organizations for the amount of time that you did. You've always had really good tenure in your organizations. So, is there any way that we can talk about, I don't know, maybe some big impactful challenges that you had to face and how, you led through those difficult times?
Yeah, I think first, what has driven me in AstraZeneca and what was successful for some time is I was a true believer that if you really do your best and you do a good job, and also you do that but not alone, you do that together with your teams, together with your bosses and your network and all this, that this will be enough. And to be fair, it has been enough for a very, very long time. So that's how, in Vietnam, the challenge was really to drive growth while progressively bringing a little bit more structure and scale into the company. For Malaysia, Singapore, I was also having some regional responsibility. It was trying to find the right common denominator as well as drive the business, plus managing two very different countries, Malaysia and Singapore, culture in one senior management team. So culturally and management-wise, that was an interesting challenge. But both these were very positive growth stories. Then when I was a sales and marketing VP in Europe, the biggest challenge was to be recognized as more than functional for me. It was to be recognized as a business leader, as part of the business leader team, I would say. And this, I think, was the solution to a certain extent, is really to work with people and generating impact and never being scared of, rolling up your sleeves, going into the countries and work with people. Again, not being a consultant, but being someone who's helping to drive business, impact people, and this kind of thing. And it worked quite nicely. The biggest challenge I had in my next role in global analytics and intelligence was actually to start understanding a completely new part of AstraZeneca that I had no clue even existed. So the link with research and development, with corporate finance, with investor relation, because your portfolio, the way you value your portfolio, is actually of major importance in the way you value the company and therefore the shareholders. So all that piece was a discovery for me, and the rest, which was the connection to the commercial world, was more of a continuity for me. But that's where I started to really understand the wider politics in the company. And to be fair, I think that's also the moment where my simple and quite fresh view of you have to do a good job together with the people that need to work with you, and that would be enough. This is where it started not to be enough. Because the politics of the companies were starting to have a more impactful aspect, I would say, in everyday life. And then I was literally called to take over the UK affiliate of AstraZeneca in a context which was a very tough context. So the business was declining. The company had been built to manage decline instead of built to drive growth with the new pipeline and portfolio that was coming. In the context of Brexit, you can imagine quite tough political context, and being on the mother market of AstraZeneca. So with loads of opportunity to connect the dots, but also a lot of complexity. And to be fair there, that was probably my biggest challenge in AstraZeneca. Not so much from a business perspective. It was tough. The business results were far from great, to be fair. In a completely transformed, in the flow of transformation of the company that we had to drive at the same time, and in the context of a extremely tough management environment. That I think the way I overcame that challenge was actually by realizing I will not overcome it. And I had to actually find a way out because the evolution of what was going on was not in line with my values. And I'm lucky I woke up, you see, because it can be a slow death progressively to get into these things. And then one day you wake up, you don't recognize yourself, you're cynical about your company, you get no pleasure whatsoever in what you're doing, you're fearing some interactions that are coming with internally with the company, and I never wanted to go into that direction. So yeah, sometimes one way to overcome challenge is actually to know when to withdraw. So that's actually what happened in AstraZeneca as well. But to be fair, 17 years of amazing experience over there. I've learned so much, and they offered, and I created also so many opportunities. Some of my best friends are coming from that network, and I'm still in touch with them. So yeah, I have absolutely no regrets.
I was going to say that. You said that in the first 5 minutes of our conversation, no regrets. And I think,
Exactly.
after a great tenure across multiple positions, leading multiple teams in multiple countries, 15 plus years. It's definitely you've earned your stripes and the opportunity to go and do something new in a different environment. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about something which is a challenge that a lot of executives are finding at the moment. When you go on the migration from large pharma into an SME and you continue to lead, how different is it? How did you manage making the move from large pharma to a smaller organization?
Yeah, and you're right. This is such a challenge, to be fair. But I think I was lucky enough to have a buffer time in between where I started to be an entrepreneur myself. So did some consulting, trained as an executive coach, and actually did some coaching as well. I worked with private equity, due diligence, then there was an acquisition, and then I started to work as a board member. So I had this transition towards being more entrepreneurial, and it was also itching me, even when I was in AstraZeneca, because when you start to realize that you spend 75% of your time trying to have common sense being heard internally, instead of driving your teams or making impact on the market, something is wrong at one stage. So it was already itching me to go into something more entrepreneurial. But I think the biggest difference between big pharma and SME is you have to completely switch your mindset into everything is in your hand. What matters is not your function, is your impact. What matters is the cash in hand of the company, because SME is at the mercy of actually being bankrupt every day, is at the mercy of shareholders not believing in your future, and you're out. So it's much more volatile than in big pharma. And when I hired people in Amarin, I also made mistake and took people who had not made that switch. You see, they came in to be a marketing director in a pharmaceutical company. When you're in an SME, everybody is responsible to generate the impact, and your function is a secondary part of it. Everybody does much more than its role, because you don't have the ability to tailor or design the scopes in the way that they are in big pharma. It's almost the opposite. In big pharma, you have microscopes, and in SME, you have megascopes, because everything is connected to each other. And when I started in Amarin, I think in my head, I was ready for that. I wanted that. And I was lucky enough to have an amazing CEO from a human perspective. He started the European organization, and I took over him while he was becoming CEO. And yeah, the trust, the partnership, the openness in what was happening, understanding, working on the next steps together, that was really what allowed, I would say, us to really build the company in Europe as we wanted it to be built, with the right values, all the learnings, all the stuff you never want to see again. You try to hold yourself accountable to actually not do it. It's not always easy. So yeah, I was, in my mind, I was ready for it. And I think that's why it worked out. Because I was ready to repair the photocopy machine and do the dishwashing. It's no big deal. It's okay. You see, if that's what the company needs, then that's what you do.
Yeah, it's interesting. What we've seen a good blend is moving from those larger corporations into SME. If you can be a strategic executor. So,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, even on the more granular level, going to fix the photocopier, but also it's like, can you fly at different heights in an organization? Can you be boardroom ready, but can you go and create followership on the shop floor?
Yeah.
Those kind of aspects, if there is an expectancy from large pharma, where's the team that's going to help me do this? Yeah. Where are all the systems and processes? It's like they don't exist.
Where's my assistant? Exactly.
yeah, you need to lean in and do it yourself. But so you think actually taking some time out to clear your mind and bring back the energy helped you be a stronger force in that SME
Yeah,
world?
completely. It did not help me. It helped me. It allowed me to be clear on what I wanted. And I think that's really the thing where you have to do that true introspection. And actually, coaching is helping to do that. Because some people, they want the romantic SME part. I work in the biotech, this is cool and this kind of thing. But actually, they don't want that. They want a well-designed function where the borders of what is their responsibility and what is not is pretty clear, where the resources are here to support the admin and this kind of thing, which is mostly not the case in SME, especially if you're in a build-up phase. First you do everything yourself. So you have Excel systems which are really crappy, and you need to put your priorities right, because it's not the priority to build up SAP in a biotech with 3 or 4 employees, which are starting the commercial organization in Europe.
And then you've been able to go from large pharma, SME, be successful within that world, and then also, in addition to that, looking at non-exec, board and advisory roles. How did that evolution land for you? What's been your kind of what cards have you had to play now, or what have you had to learn differently
Yeah.
from the other parts of your career?
That's an interesting one. I think the board role came to me a little bit by chance to a certain extent. We were very close with the due diligence team, both on the private equity side and on the management side. So I was acting a little bit like a go-between, and that's why I was a natural candidate to be part of the board of the newly acquired company. And I learned a lot to be a non-executive, because my nature and my instinct is to be executive rather than non-executive. So that was a big learning, and I appreciated that, because there is something slightly relaxing into being a non-executive, and the triggers for impact are different. It's not about doing it yourself, it's about making sure that you have the right discussion for the people to have the aha moment in their own ways to actually move the needle forward. And that was full of learning, and I like that so much that now that I'm in transition, I actually took a full course of being a board member with the University of St. Gallen, and I can only recommend that program, because it gives you an overview on how to be a professional board member. A lot of people think that board membership is coming because as the cherry on the cake of a long career and successful career. But that is less and less the case, because boards have loads of responsibility, more than what we think. It is real work, and if you don't put on the work, you don't bring the value as a board member. And for me, being both an executive in Amarin and a board member actually helped me understand how I should interact as an executive with our own board. You see? So it has benefits. Once you reach a certain stage in your career, a certain level, connecting the dots on the agendas of the different pieces and the different parts, from the board, from the CEO and the executive committee, from the rest of the management team and all kind of thing, this is very useful for your own impact, and to empathize with the agenda, the emotions, what is driving all these different actors. And that actually helps you be more impactful, be more efficient, and continue to learn. Because in 2 years and a half with Amarin, I've learned so much more. I didn't even know these parts existed when I was in AstraZeneca, because I was in my job. But when I was in Amarin, I was part of an executive team, reporting to the CEO, exposed to investors, to JP Morgan conference and other conferences, exposed to the board almost on a bi-monthly basis. all these learnings, they're with me now. And yeah, it's a bit of work, but the moment you see what connects the dots, it is actually one bigger thing instead of being many small things.
And I love the theme of you continually learning and investing in yourself as you've continued to develop your career, even to this point. You know, it's quite clear to see that the coaching aspect has helped you now in this next phase.
Yeah, as well.
Because of your, ability to listen and understand the triggers for impact being different when you're on somebody's board.
Yeah.
But also it's like, I love that board member course at St. Gallen. I think that's going to be a nice nugget for people. They'll probably see a little uptick now in people going onto that course after listening to this. But there's a lot of people now that are looking at, a portfolio career after a good career in life sciences executive leadership, and they don't know what to do next.
Yeah.
So it seems as though you've kind of, again, been a pathfinder on your own to try and work out how you can become a better version of yourself in your next evolution. So
still a lot of work to be done there, but
so congratulations on that. So, I think that we've been able to cover a lot so far. One question that I have got in my mind, probably the last one before we go on to a little bit of future leadership stuff, but have you got a leader or some kind of mentor that you have worked with or that has been the most impactful in your career?
So I think I'll answer in two ways. I have one which has inspired me extraordinarily from a personal perspective, and I've got a couple of others which have inspired me, but in the negative way, like not do that, do not do that. I think the one that inspired me the most was my CEO in Amarin, so Karim Mikhail. From a people perspective, from an opportunity, a vision-driven perspective, he has been amazing. Respectful but driven, intense but human, result-driven but also understanding the mechanics which are behind the result. And I think, he has been the most inspiring leader that I've ever worked with this kind of magic mix of things that are coming in. But the question I have is, when you have a leader which is so human, is it the right thing to be very successful in such a difficult and harsh, I would say, environment? On the other side, I see people who humanly I value much less, which are still extremely successful and are driving companies in a very good way. So yeah, I'm a bit hesitant there. But in AstraZeneca, I've seen leaders showing traits of brilliance, of business acumen, of drive and all this, which are really admirable, like computers. But from a people perspective, really not good, and that has inspired me not to do a lot of things. And there is one aspect which is critically important for me, and I think is getting lost progressively in the companies. Maybe because it doesn't have a lot of business impact, so it makes sense. It's the loyalty piece. I feel that when people are working together, you see that there is so much that is given and taken on both sides. And I think for me that is building some sort of loyalty. And to see that this loyalty is actually just something which is made of pure thin air and that can be negated in one meeting, that is something that is for me a no-go, an absolute no-go. And I understand this is a bit naive, because in reality, loyalty, I'm not sure it builds business impact. But from a people perspective and from a building long-lasting relationship based on respect, I think that's critical, and this is very close to my heart.
Thank you for sharing. And it actually brings me on quite nicely to the future of leadership. So I'll ask you a couple of questions on this, because looking at the change in millennials and Gen Z and the change in loyalty when it comes to their careers, they're not staying in, or the vision is that they won't be staying in the same organization for their entire career. They see it more as a tour of duty, and that they'll go and, average tenure is way down, all of those kind of things. What do you think leadership needs to do in the future to change and adapt to this new kind of workforce that's coming?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I don't think there is a unique silver bullet to it. But for me, the key to that permanent evolution, because every generation brings something different. Sometimes you can have 2, 3, 4 generations in the same company. So the key for the leaders is really to be able to open ears, eyes, and senses to what really matters for that different generations, and then trying to find a common denominator, which is able to bring people together instead of pull them apart. I think for the new generation, the sense of purpose is very important, and the sense of purpose is going far beyond making money for the shareholder. It's really making that difference and being true to it, meaning put your money where your mouth is and show that you are true to this sense of purpose. The second is also realizing that there are things you can do as a company and things you can't do. Don't try to make a lifer of a Gen Z, because it's not going to work. So do what you can, but also respect that people will have perspective, objectives in their lives which will differ from the one that you're trying to get for your company. And for this, Vietnam has helped me. In Vietnam, people were able to change jobs in the blink of an eye for $5 more per month. You see, so once you faced this kind of volatility, you know to listen more to that, but also to be honest, the one leadership message that has resonated the most for me was one that I learned actually in BCG, coming from an organizational sociologist, is people do what they do because they're smart, not because they're dumb. And this is so important to understand, meaning in their context, for what they understand at that moment, this is the right decision. You see? So they do something that might seem super dumb, but they do it because they're smart. In their context, that's what makes sense. And if you're truly applying this, then not only it gives you empathy to some things that you really think and believe are stupid, and you still believe it's stupid, but at least you understand why. And the moment you understand why, then the discussion can start. And I think that's how you build trust, and then a little bit longer lasting relationships.
Love that, Laurent. Thank you. What piece of advice would you give your younger self back in that first leadership role? What would you tell yourself?
So I would reinforce don't be scared. Okay? Fear is never a good advisor. It's good to keep you on your toes, though. So I think that's one thing. The second would be listen actively, and the third is think and trust yourself. I think, because the moment you stop thinking, that's the moment you stop learning. That's the moment you start doing stupid things. You have to listen and be humble enough to believe you don't know better. You see, so that's the listening part, which I think is critical. And don't be scared, but still be aware. It's like, okay, open your eyes, open your ears, be aware of your environment, and yeah. But all this can be completely overwhelming. So trust your common sense. Trust that also you can undo some of the mistakes, and you make mistakes, learn from them, quickly overturn them, and move on. But yeah, I don't think there is one silver bullet. You have to, do what you believe is true, and do that in a way that allows you to capture enough information not to be too completely wrong, ultimately.
And don't be scared. I like that one. Don't be scared. Think, listen.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
absolutely outstanding. I think there has been some wonderful advice here. I think the type of listener as well that we're looking for from this podcast is somebody that has either been through your journey, and is now looking at what is next after their executive career and looking at some of that board and advisory stuff. Maybe it's people that are looking how to migrate from large pharma to SME. Maybe it's people that are looking at how to not be scared, don't hold yourself back, take that global adventure. For others, it might be about building that strong team at home as the bedrock and foundation for dual careers. I mean, you've given us so much, so I can't thank you enough. Absolutely fantastic. Listen, I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
What I wanted to do now as well is just ask you some quick fire questions. And what I would love is, before we dive into our quick fire questions, is there a piece of advice or leadership type motto that you still kind of hold on to this day?
There is one thing. So it's I've come across, because when you're facing many challenges, you're always worried. And so I looked on the internet, as many people do, to see what we can do about the worrying stuff. And I fell on this very simple arborescence of decision making. The first question is the why worry. So I call that the why worry thing. And the why worry thing is so powerful and so true, but at the same time so difficult to apply. It works like this. The first question is, do you have a problem in life? Okay? And then there is two possibilities. No, then why worry? Okay? Or yes, and then there is a second question. Can you do something about it? Okay? And on the can you do something about it, there is yes, so why worry? Or there is no, so why worry? You see, ultimately, and I think we spend so much energy and we lose so much clarity in worrying, in losing sleep over stuff. And I'm not saying it's easy, and I've been the first one of losing a little bit of sleep here and there. But the why worry did allow me to keep the energy up, to make fun, have fun with the teams as well. Because honestly, worrying doesn't help anything. It's like hope is not a strategy and worrying is not a solution. I think these kind of things are very important, and they have helped me in moments of difficulties.
Yeah, I was told a piece of advice that you have 90% of the same thoughts every day.
Mm-hmm.
So you only have a small amount, 10%, to change those thoughts, to kind of come up with either a solution, a different way of thinking, a bit more positivity. But if you have an awareness of it, why, as you said, why worry?
Why worry?
You've got that chance to think about it and try and change things. So that's an absolutely fantastic piece of advice. Thank you for that. So I'm going to dive in just quickly. We normally finish the podcast with some quick fire questions.
Yeah.
What is the most impactful team meeting and why?
For me, is the offsite, because that's where the team comes together in both human and business way. So I think that's quite clear for me. Offsite, 1 or 2 days, team dinner. That's where the team comes together in the best way, and that's the bedrock of usually much better business meetings and understanding and trust building.
Thank you. How do you balance work and life, and what strategies do you use to avoid burnout?
I'm still figuring this one out, but for me, the key is to be clear where your energy comes from and what drains your energy. So at one stage, what drains your energy needs to stop. And if that's work, that work needs to stop. And what brings you energy needs to start. And sometimes there is no border between life, work and life, because both are bringing energy. And I felt a bit like that with Amarin. Both were bringing me energy. So I've never worked so much in my life, but it was still bringing energy, so that was good. So the way I manage that is more in reflecting on my own energy building, and also the impact I have on my family. If you come back home and you're completely drained, you're a black hole of energy. Nobody deserves that. So that's more the way I think of it. How do you manage your energy rather than trying to, make a hard stop on this kind of thing?
Lovely, thank you. What is the one book or podcast that you would recommend for aspiring leaders in the industry?
I don't have one, to be fair. I don't
This
have
one.
one.
Active Ingredients.
Yeah, that podcast. Yeah, I think this one is not too bad. I have to see how it comes out when you edit all the crap and you keep only the good stuff. But it's no, I don't have a book. I like snippets of wisdom that are coming from the strangest places. You see, from a leadership perspective, for example, I did a full sales meeting on "Go Big or Go Extinct," which is an inspiring quote from a very intellectual film, Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
Or do or don't do, there is no try. You see, the Yoda stuff in Star Wars. So that's more the kind of thing that sometimes create a resonance in me, and then I take it up and I use it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, I'm not a one book man kind of thing.
That's fine, no problem. And then just my final question. If you weren't in this industry, what would you want to do instead?
Very good question. If I was not in this industry, I think I would be in technology or something like that. I love everything which is science, tech, making a difference for the future of people and this kind of thing. I'm a bit of a geek still. Remember, I was a nerd. Now I'm an educated geek, getting on the old side. So that kind of thing, I think.
Yeah, not a salsa teacher.
I've been salsa teacher, but I'm not good. I'm not good enough to do that. I did that when I was younger and more flexible. But right now I'm a little bit has-been on that side.
Well, thank you ever so much. I mean, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. You have given so many good snippets, pieces of advice. Your career is a tapestry of very differing roles, cultures. It's clear that you've taken your own advice. Don't be scared. Go and take those opportunities. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I think it's been absolutely brilliant. So thank you very much, Laurent.
Thank you so much, Tom. You're being very nice with me. I hope it was good. I loved it as well, because this kind of conversation makes you reflect a little bit also on all the past, and it's rare that you have the opportunity to do that and look back. So I feel good about it, and thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see what your career holds next. Very exciting time to put all of this together. And yeah, the next 5-10 years, I could really see something exciting happening.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What a fascinating conversation that was with Laurent. I loved it. What a great energy, such a nice man, got an awesome story. But what stood out for me most was his ability to take opportunities, embracing uncertainty and continually learning at every stage of his career, wherever he was living. So from his early days in the consulting to leading major teams in large pharma, and then also that transition into biotech and board roles. Laurent's story is a bit of a masterclass in adaptability and leadership. I particularly loved his emphasis as well on being true to himself, and that no regrets philosophy was cool. So ensuring that every decision aligned with his values so that he could move forward with confidence. That transition as well from large pharma to high growth biotech was also a great lesson in that mindset shift needed to succeed from blue chip into a smaller, more dynamic, fast moving environment. And then finally, I just loved the balance of work and family. I thought that was super powerful. As leaders, success isn't just about what we achieve in business, but also how we create strong foundations at home. Anyway, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your network. And if Laurent said something that resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So connect with me, connect with him on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time on Active Ingredients.